All right, let's talk about VA disability claims. And some of you might be saying, but Adam, at the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce right now, it's Restaurant and Retail Month. Why would you be talking about VA disability claims information? Well, first off, it's really, really important for everyone who served and their families to ensure that the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is holding up their end of the agreement and supporting you in the way that they committed to doing when you signed on the dotted line. When you did that, you made a commitment to them, but they also made a promise to you. And a lot of times they don't follow through on that. You follow through, you serve honorably. They need to follow through too. So, like, overarchingly, super important thing at all times. But like, it can be really hard to engage in retail operations, whether you are a consumer or an entrepreneur or a salesperson or a business owner, whatever. It can be hard to do things that are as pedestrian as going to a restaurant and enjoying a meal with your family because you may be dealing with the lingering physical or mental or otherwise or combined effects of things that are plaguing you by virtue of your service. Why? I mean, it's hard to talk about things that seem so pedestrian when there are people who are suffering and not getting taken care of the way that they earned. They earned that. And a lot of veterans are like, I wouldn't, I don't need to file a claim. I'm not a taker or I don't need handouts. Baloney. Take that attitude and throw it away. That's dumb. The Department of Defense made you a promise that they would take care of you enduringly, financially, medically, or otherwise for anything that happened to you, almost anything that happened to you, or any ailment that developed while you were serving. They promised to do that. You're not asking for a handout by having them fulfill their end of the agreement. That was part of the deal. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of veterans don't realize that, and it drives me nuts. So I'm an evangelist for this. So we're taking a step away from talking about retail and restaurants. We'll get back to that next week. But in the meantime, we need to talk about this because this topic always crops up, and I get frustrated because there's so much that y'all deserve and have earned that you deserve to be taken care of for, whether that is a financial compensation, whether that's medical benefits, whatever. And sometimes, believe it or not, the process of filing for these and getting the VA to follow through on their end of the deal can be really complicated. And they often don't get it right. Sometimes you'll use a veteran services officer, a VSO. You'll use an office like the Disabled American Veterans or the VFW or American Legion or any of those departments that are actually certified to help people file disability claims. And I think that's a great place to start. I've used them myself, from DAV to American Legion to, my initial claim I filed through Texas Vet Commission out of San Antonio. And a lot of that got substantiated, and I got a disability rating for. Excellent. There's some things that they got wrong. And a couple of them I was like, okay, whatever. But some of them were like, okay, this is bothering me because this is an enduring issue. How can I get them? Like, I've appealed. How can I get them to get this right? Sometimes when you need someone or when you need some help, you need some firepower getting it right. Sometimes you need to turn to somebody who has a specific targeted expertise in this field, in speaking the VA's language, in speaking the Department of Defense's language, in doing what needs to be done to get folks taken care of the way they've earned and deserve to be taken care of. I've done it. Lots of people have done it. I've called on this person personally for help myself, and he's helping me right now. He's a rock star, and so is his whole team. Jim Brzezinski, he's the man. Tabak Law, they're amazing. Today, we're going to talk about the current climate, current state of the Department of Veterans Affairs. There's a lot of changes, a lot of things you need to know about. current state of VA disability benefits. And we're going to talk about, like, what is the process? What happens when you need more firepower? When you need somebody in your corner like Jim and like the team at Tabak Law to go duke it out for you. How do you go through that process? What can you expect? We're going to get into all of that exciting stuff after this very brief video bumper. Let's go! Boom, 4.5 seconds later, we're back. Friends, happy to introduce my friend, Jim Brzezinski from Tabak Law. How are you, my man?
I'm doing great, Adam. I'm happy to be here. And, I really enjoyed listening to your first few minutes talking about the fact that these benefits are not a handout. Mm-hmm. They're the furthest thing from a handout. I mean,
absolutely.
There's a lot of other government benefits that are also not handouts that people feel the same way. But this one in particular is, and you being someone who served, I was not. I'm lucky enough to work with you folks who have, and I get to experience, having conversations with some amazing people who have put their lives on the line, and some of them are paying the price now, even post-military, and that's really what it's all about. The VA was formed basically as an insurance policy, right? Like, you go to work for Wisconsin Veteran Chamber of Commerce, you've got insurance, you've got workers' comp insurance, you've probably got an option to buy disability insurance, you've probably got an option to buy life insurance, you've probably got medical insurance. Well, guess what? The military has those things too. Mm-hmm. And, if you bought health insurance and you were suffering from some sort of medical condition, would you ever say, oh, you know what? I don't need it. I don't need treatment.
I don't want a handout. Yeah.
A handout. Or, let's say you have life insurance and you pass away. Is your widow going to say, nah, I don't need it. I'm fine though. It's the same.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it like that.
It's the same thing. And it's, and I mean, especially, the people who are enlisted and just get in. I mean, I see what the salary is. It's not, you're not being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to be in the military. These benefits are what make up for that, lower, I don't want to say lower, but it's, it's included. Just like any other job, the benefits are part of the package.
Part of the total compensation package. Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, what you said, I have that conversation all the time, and it's spot on. And if my tax dollars being a non-veteran have to go to something, this is what I want it going for. And I want people taking advantage.
I think that's awesome. And I'm just curious. We may have talked about this last time you were on the show. You've been our most repeat guest here.
Hey, all right.
This is our third or fourth time chatting, and just it's always a hit every time. People need this information and they share it with the people that they love. So you not being a service member yourself, what drove you to this specific discipline of law?
It was a little bit of a few different things kind of all colliding at once. Mm-hmm. When I went to law school, I had no idea that this is where I would be.
Right.
I didn't know it was even an option as a practice area, really. So going back to probably around 2007, I got a job with the VA. Now, I do have service member family members who are, active duty, were in all 20 years and retired.
Sure.
My grandpa ended up as a senior master sergeant with the 128th out of Mitchell. My uncle's over there right now.
Nice.
Was in the Navy. And it's, so, it's not like I didn't have any experience with the whole veterans and military. They were deployed during the Gulf War, and I got to be, that experience of having a family member over there during that sort of thing. So I do have that. But what really the progression of my career, basically in 2007, I had a friend who was working at the VA, and there was this huge hiring blitz. Like my class, and it was like, I say class because when we did a training, there was like 100 people being trained for my position over at the Milwaukee VA at the time. And I think I was probably like the third out of 5 classes like that all happened within like a 6-month period. So it was crazy. Basically what happened was some funding got allocated. They had to use it immediately or lose it. And oh boy, did they use it. So that was how I got in. I started off as a VSR, which is a veteran service representative. Basically, the letters you get from the VA, VSRs draft those up and send them out. So there's a group that tells the VSRs what the actual decision is. Then the VSRs are the people who basically take what they're told and communicate the decision. So that was what I was doing. Then because of being in law school, I was eligible to get up to what's called the rating board, or becoming an RVSR, which is, when you file, you get that first rating decision. I was one of the people who was taking the evidence, writing those decisions, making the actual decision, and and then sending it down to the RVSR to be mailed out. So did that for a couple of years, and then I was actually going to law school part-time at Marquette at night. And it ended up getting to the point where I sort of had to choose like law school or my career with the VA, which the VA is a pretty decent job, and not many people leave there once they're in there, because you got the government bennies, you got the
great benefits.
So but I had I had already invested 2 years worth of tuition into law school, and I was like, okay, well, I have to do this. So I left to finish full time. But what I was doing was I was still volunteering at the VA. I was volunteering in the legal clinic, which I don't know if you ever, back in like the old buildings back behind the hospital, there was this building that was not quite from the Civil War, but probably pretty close. It's
the one that they recently refurbished.
Yeah. So they did the soldiers' homes, which were kind of
right.
It was around there, but there's a little admin building that they would let us come in, and we would do these legal clinics where vets could come with literally any legal issue. There's an attorney, and then there's law students working together with the attorney to get some sort of advice to the veterans. And the funny thing was, because of the VSOs that are available to vets for free, whenever someone came in with a benefit question, as part of us being there, we had to refer them to the VSO. Like, we weren't able to help with benefits, even though I had some really good knowledge to pass along at the time.
Years of experience too. Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, I ended up actually talking with a couple of vets just either before or after the clinic started or ended. And I ended up giving a few vets just some pointers. It's just not really like, I wasn't like representing them or detailed advice, but like, hey, here's what I would do in your situation. Go do this, get that. And what ended up happening was, like, the word got out that, I could be there, because we'd say, okay, go to the VSO. And they're like, well, I just came from the VSO. Like, they didn't have a solution, and that's why they were seeking legal help. This was 2011. There really wasn't anyone practicing around the area at the time. And I don't think there really are many more, that focus on it. There's a nice firm out in Madison called Weston Dunn.
Weston Dunn. Yep. They're partners of ours. Yeah. Members of the chamber as well. Good people over there.
Yeah, they're great. So Shauna actually worked in the same department I did as a RVSR in the VA.
How about that?
Yeah. So we didn't work together. We just barely missed crossing paths. But so she took the same trajectory as me into, helping vets. And but anyway, so I was at these clinics. I was sort of getting the word out, and there'd be people coming when I was scheduled to work and like waiting after, and we talked. So what ended up happening was after like a year and a half more of law school and doing these volunteer clinics, I had probably a good 15 to 20 vets that were just waiting for me to graduate. And you got to get accredited by the VA to represent veterans. You know, an attorney, you have to be accredited. So you can't just pick up and say, I'm going to represent a veteran on a VA,
Right.
because you won't be recognized by the VA unless you go through their accreditation process. So I had to get that. And then within a few months of graduation, May of 11, you know, I got the accreditation, and I started working on these cases. And you probably have been applying long enough that you remember the old appeals process with, you know, you file, then you could file an NOD with a notice of disagreement, and you could get a decision. And I mean, the funny thing back then is it literally took sometimes 5 years from the date you filed a disagreement.
Wow.
To get the next step of the decision, which was called a statement of the case. And then it could be sometimes another 3 or 4 years before you would get a hearing with a judge if you asked for one.
That's insane. And how many people gave up during that period of time?
I could tell you now, like the vast majority, because now they're coming back again, and I'm looking and I see, okay, well, you know, they filed, but now they've let their appeal period pass.
Right.
And I'll tell you, some of those cases are still pending, not as many, but it's not uncommon for me to sign on a vet who thinks they don't have a claim pending because it's been literally years since they've heard anything.
But there's still something in process somewhere.
I get in the file, I'm like, hey, we don't need to file this. We actually just need to prepare because you're going to have a hearing probably within the next year or so, because it's already filed. And that
now the process doesn't take quite as long.
No, it's gotten better. It actually has. And it's because they've opened up some new channels of appeals.
Okay.
It used to be very linear. Like you would file your case. If you got denied, you would file a notice of disagreement. You would wait for a statement of the case, which like I said, could take sometimes 3 or more years. And then if you still weren't happy, you could file what was called a Form 9, go to the BVA and wait, you know, either just get a decision from a judge or get a hearing. And then, you know, go into the courts after that. Well, now what you can do is you can file your case, allow the VA to work it up with what they've got, get a decision, and the VA will notify you what's missing. So rather than file an appeal right away, you can get what's missing and file what's called a supplemental claim. And there's certain times that you still would go to the next level, even if that they came with that, which, you know, we can talk about if there's time, but you can actually file a supplemental claim, even though basically it starts the process over again. It's like, okay, you can save my effective date from this first claim, but I want to go through the original claim process again, because here's new evidence that you didn't see last time.
Sure.
It used to be you would file your claim, and they would tell you what you needed. And even if you had the new evidence, in order to have it reviewed, you would have to file the notice of disagreement, and you would have to wait 3 to 5 years sometimes to get that next decision, even though it was just the simple piece of evidence that was missing. So now what's happening is you get the new evidence, you file the supplemental claim, which starts the process over for you. And a lot of them are being, you know, claims that could have taken 3 or 4 years can now get done in 12 months, you know, because you wait 3 to 6 months for your first decision. They tell you what's missing, you get it, you ask again, and you get another decision. So that actually does knock out quite a bit of claims. It helps vets all around, I think, because, you know, you're not waiting, which, you know, some of the vets that come my way are so disabled they can't work and they're struggling or homeless, you know. I mean,
they need answers, not 3 to 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that it still does take time.
Yes.
And even though it is a simplified and expedited process compared to what it used to be, if you've already received a denial, if you have already received a decision that you are not, that you don't accept, that you're not happy with, it's super important to have somebody help guide you through this process. right? And that would be someone like you. That would be
Yeah.
Tabak Law and folks who know how to get this done so it doesn't get lost waiting in the wings for years on end. Somebody who can manage the case. And the other important note is that I'm not like, I'm using Tabak Law right now. I'm using Jim and his team to help me settle a claim dispute. And I'm not paying out of pocket up front. You're not paying the $250 an hour lawyer fees on the front end. I didn't pay a retainer to make this happen. This is a service there's no upfront cost to the veteran. Can you explain kind of how that
Yeah.
works? Because anybody who might say like, well, I don't want to go to a lawyer for this or a lawyer for the VA, they're just taking advantage of veterans, which is baloney. Can you just explain
Sure.
how do you keep the lights on, and where does that compensation come from, so people understand that what you're doing is totally on the up and up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So, and one thing that's very important to know is like, we don't get paid on a case, even if you were to sign on with us, and this happens all the time, and
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
love it when it happens, but like, I file a case and then I look and I say, hey, you had this happen in the service. Why haven't you ever filed for this other disability? And they say, oh, I never thought about it. And I'm like, well, are you still having issues? Oh yeah. Okay. Well, let's file that claim. And it's such an easy claim that they win right away. Filed first time, no appeal needed. We can't get paid on those cases because we only get paid if there's some decision that has to be appealed. Like, so a lot of vets are saying, this claim is too easy. I don't want help. You know what? If we take your case and it's that easy, it's not going to cost you anything. We have cases all the time where, I know for a fact that the VA will screw up enough of these cases that for me, it makes sense to still take a lot of them and just do it, knowing that a good percentage are going to win right away. And, we'll chalk it up to helping a vet that deserved it and needed it. And we'll go our merry way with no fee. I mean, I would say probably 10 to 15% of our cases get settled with no fee.
That's a super important point here.
Yeah.
It's that his team only, like Weston, you mentioned Weston Dunn, very similar situation. And so Jim and his team at Tabak Law, anybody who works in this space, they only get compensation if there has been an appeal on an existing decision, and that appeal is reversed, and there is back pay that is owed to the veteran, at which time the firm will take a portion of that. Is that accurate?
Good, Adam. So then when we do have an appeal, and even on some of those cases, when they get it right, they get something wrong, whether it be the effective date or the percentage.
Mhm.
Honestly, as an attorney, I probably would make myself way too busy, but I would, as a vet, I would want every decision at least reviewed by an attorney,
Mhm.
because we do it for free. We review the case. Like,
Right.
that fine cases we would take is by reviewing a case for free. And I'll tell you, if I can't win a case and get back pay, I'm not going to take the case. And you basically just got your free review, and the VA did what they were supposed to do.
Right.
Whereas, the vast majority of the time I say, okay, well, actually, I see something that we can appeal, and, you know, it's going to result in money for you. And if there's back pay, then we would get a fee on that. And our fee is, what ends up happening is the VA withholds 20% of the back pay only. So like, if you would get 100% for a year, we would get only a payment on that year of back pay. It wouldn't be like every month where we get a chunk of your payment or anything like that. It's just that back pay amount.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes cases that have been waiting a long time, there's a decent amount of back pay, and
Right.
and those cases are generally tougher cases, and they generally take more, um, not only work, but a lot of times we have to put a lot of money into it, such as expert opinions, and
Mhm.
and that's another piece of the puzzle, Adam. And we don't charge upfront for any legal fees that are needed. So like, a lot of firms, and even a lot of VA firms, not only will they charge more than 20%, like some will charge a third or even more, but a lot of them will make you pay for your experts, which sometimes can be $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a
Right.
pop. And we are lucky enough to have a firm that has other practice areas that can help us to fund what we're doing with the VA until we get paid.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And, and like I was saying, some of these vets come to us and they have nothing. They are literally,
they can't work.
yeah,
How do you front $1,000, $2,000, $2,500 to get compensated in the way that you deserve if you can't work?
Yep. So what we'll do is whatever expenses, we'll notify the vet, hey, like, we're going to do this opinion. It costs X amount of dollars. We're going to pay it. We think it'll win your case, at which point you'll get a nice chunk of back pay. And then we're going to ask for it to be repaid if we win. But we are of the mindset where if we recommend something be paid out, and our recommendation is such that you don't win, we're going to eat that cost. Because, if I'm recommending you spend $2,000 and then you lose, you're going to be like, okay, well, I would have never did this on my own. You told me to do that. So, and that's fair. And
so there's really no risk for a veteran.
No risk
to give you a call and at least see, or even go through the process of seeing if there can be some sort of a reversal. There's no risk in it for them.
Exactly. And here's really kind of what I'm finding. I've been doing this long enough where I've seen thousands of case files.
Right.
And here's what I'm finding is that a lot of vets, right when they got out, applied for all these different things that were bothering them, and there may be a list of 20 different things. And of that list, only 5 got approved. And some maybe even got approved at a 0%. And then they just don't do anything for 10, 15, 20 years, which I get because, you're young and you're like, oh, yeah, the VA is paying me this. This is wonderful. I'm living good. I'm getting this extra money. I'm working. But then there's, what a lot of people don't think about is, you're going to get older. Your body's only going to get worse. Mm-hmm. All of these things that maybe are just slight annoyances now could turn into very serious conditions. And
you may need a reevaluation. Your slight back pain.
Yes.
Could, from schlepping around a pack for years, could become a serious issue, at which point, it wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have served.
Yep.
And even though it wasn't a huge issue, maybe just a nagging little pain here and there, they service connected it, rated it at 0% because it wasn't, affecting your life that badly.
Yep.
And 10 years down the road, you're bent over 90 degrees most of the time, and you can hardly get around. So they're still responsible for that situation. Right. So it may not be that they got it wrong to begin with, but they may need to make a change to adjust your rating and level of compensation. Is that what you're saying?
That's true. And the interesting thing, is that the VA will sure enough schedule you a future exam if you've got a high rating, right, to reevaluate you. You got 100%. They might say, okay, well, you got to come back in 5 years to see if you're still 100%. Mm-hmm, well, if 0%, they're not going to say, hey, you got to come back in 5 years to see if you're worse. That's not how they work. Like, you have to let them know. And one thing that's sort of interesting is there was a case, I believe in 2012, that came down through the courts where it deals with pain, because what ended up happening is pre-2012, you got a 0% rating on physical conditions such as like musculoskeletal joint issues. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have the sufficient loss of motion, because everything with the VA is based on, when it comes to musculoskeletal, is based on your range of motion.
Right. As my shoulder, for example, the range of motion, that's what they brought me in and had 2 doctors, and they said, move here, push here, move here. They had a little protractor out to measure the, how many degrees I can move my shoulder back or whatever.
So if you don't meet the requirements for a 10% based on range of motion, what was supposed to happen is if there's painful motion, you would get at least a 10%. So like every major joint, you would get at least a 10% if there was painful motion, even if you didn't meet the requirement with they call it, I think it's either pronounced goniometer or goniometer. It's
Okay.
the protractor thing.
Sure. Right.
So they would use this device, and yeah, if it's not enough of a loss of motion, you might have a disability, but it's a 0%, which is 0% is important because it allows you to get treated, and they've already admitted there's an issue. So when it gets worse, you don't have to fight that whole causation fight. But what ended up happening is prior to 2012, the painful motion required objective evidence of painful motion. Okay, so in your exam, there was a checkbox, and it's so funny because I'm like reading the remarks of the exam. Yeah, this guy complains of pain all the time. It flares up. He can't move, blah, blah, blah. Then is there objective evidence of painful motion on this exam? No.
No, because in the office, he didn't scream or wince in pain while moving his or her elbow.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because it's objective evidence of subjective complaint. Anyways,
Right.
But I don't get
that's BA for you.
But anyway, so you'd read all these documents, and the vets are complaining of pain this and pain that, and I can't do this, I can't do that. 0%, because no objective evidence.
Of course.
So in 2012, they loosened that requirement to where, they're able to give you the painful motion, even if it just sort of describes painful motion.
Sure.
There's no objective evidence. So a lot of people pre-2012 that were rated 0, if you just go back in, you're almost guaranteed to get at least a 10% for that issue. I mean,
interesting.
Yeah. So anything that comes out now that's a musculoskeletal that's recently been rated since 2012 and is a 0%, like,
it's worth a look.
My head explodes when I read those decisions. You're telling me that this person has a service-connected joint condition. You've already admitted there's a condition, and you've already admitted the service caused it, and you're saying that this person never has pain in that joint. Like, I don't know. I have pain. I have no conditions. I have pain in my joints all the time. I mean, like,
right.
I can't imagine someone who's actually got something diagnosed in that joint never having pain, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
It's weird because it doesn't have to be debilitating. It doesn't have to be constant pain. It doesn't have to be throbbing pain. It doesn't have to be a 10 on the pain scale.
It just has to be pain.
Just has to be pain. Yeah. You say, hey, I have pain sometimes. Boom, 10%.
So for someone who's worked as long as you have doing this on one side of the table and then on the other side of the table, you've seen it all. You understand the process from sun up to sundown, the whole thing. And I'm sure, like with the pain thing, there are certain trends that come in and out. You see the VA acting a certain way for certain decisions, and then that'll change the next year or over a decade. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. What trends do you notice now? Hot issue right now is cancer and lung-related issues associated with exposure to burn pits, and there's some upcoming executive orders and directives coming down. Well, is it that primarily? Are there any other trends that you're seeing, things that folks that may have a claim or a 0 rating or a dismissed or a denied claim that they should be aware of?
Yeah, here's a couple of things. And the burn pit thing is going to be huge. I mean, we've been screaming about burn pits at the top of our lungs forever. There is a good list of stuff that they're going to recognize as presumptive, which means basically that list, if you have that and you were in affected area, you don't have to get a medical opinion linking. It's called presumptive, like similar to Agent Orange. Like if you have Agent Orange and you have prostate cancer, you don't have to go to a doctor to say, hey, did my Agent Orange exposure cause this prostate cancer? That's not.
Wow. So if you have verified exposure to Agent Orange and you ended up with prostate cancer, they just assume the connection?
So assumed. Yep. Same with
And that's where they are, or where they're getting to be with burn pit and certain cancers.
that's where they're getting to be with burn pits and that list of cancers that you saw. There's probably about 7 or 8. I think it was like different types of lung cancer, small cell. There was like I think not esophageal, but like larynx cancer. Just all stuff related to the respiratory system. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's that stuff that folks were breathing over there was so bad. I mean, there's going to be many other conditions that come out. I have several cases where I'm trying to link, brain cancer, and I think that's actually what President Biden's son died of, and he was over there. So that that stuff is out there, and there is medical evidence of a link. It's just not to the point where the VA is willing to say, "Hey, we're just going to give it to you without an opinion."
But right now, if I'm a veteran who has cancer of any of those kinds and was exposed, and was deployed and exposed to an area where there was a burn pit, I should be calling a guy like you.
You should be calling me, or you should at the very least get your claim in, because it's not finalized yet. But if you wait till it's finalized, you're going to lose effective date coverage. You're going to lose you may lose
back pay.
You may lose some of your back pay. Yeah,
because you only get back paid up to the day that you file the claim.
Under all circumstances, the first date you filed for a particular condition is the furthest back that they're going to go.
Not like I was by a burn pit in 2009, so you got to pay me until then. It's like from the day that I file.
No, if you never filed it, you're never going to get paid that far back. So get that filed. The other thing I really want to stress is that even though they come out with these lists, there still are so many more conditions that are potentially related. So, it always helps, even if you've got something that's not on that list, to have someone take a look. Like, hey, is there any studies that show, like I said, brain cancer is caused by these? Because they sort of know what chemicals were potentially in that burn pit smoke. And you can look then into the studies of those particular chemicals as to how they affect the body. And it only makes sense, right? Like if you're breathing it in, it's causing lung cancer, that it's not like, your lungs are this, impenetrable latex thing, or, I mean, like it soaks in, right?
It follows. Well, and 10 years down the road, they could be like, okay, well, now we've discovered that colon cancer can possibly be resultant from, and here you had filed a claim 10 years ago and they hadn't seen the connection then. 10 years from now, maybe they see the connection and they owed you and could potentially owe you a huge payout. Is that
chemical exposure cases? The VA is probably, if they watch this ever, they're going to be very mad at me, but like anything that I'm suffering from, if I was exposed, I'm filing for it. Even if there's no evidence right now, and I'm talking any chemical exposure. Like if you were a firefighter and you were exposed to the firefighting foam, I'm filing it. If I was in Camp Lejeune and I had the bad water, I'm filing.
Right. If you had any sort of, if you lived on base in the same state as any military water issues,
yes,
file.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably say no at first, but the studies just keep coming out, and as more and more vets are getting sick, more and more studies are being commissioned, and a lot of times you can, like I said, you're never going to get paid back to the earliest you're ever going to get paid is back to the date you first filed. So I'm getting everything in there if I'm a vet and having those types of exposures.
And if someone's filing for the very first time, you can do it yourself through your eBenefits portal, or they don't use eBenefits anymore, the va.gov.
Correct.
You can file it yourself. However, I personally, and you can correct me because you're the expert here, you can set up an appointment for DAV, American Legion, VFW, any of those veteran services officers, the certified folks, for free. And their job is to help you file that claim. And they understand that language. I would never file a claim without their help. personally. Would you suggest the same?
I agree 100%. You know, and a lot of people will use them for appeals too. I personally believe that they are wonderful and amazing at getting the paperwork filed for
An initial claim.
initial claims. So good. Yeah, they know everything about it. Like that's a no-brainer to me. And if I and even sometimes if the appeal is just like, hey, we didn't get your medical records, that might be a fine time to use them too. Here's when I think going to an attorney is really a good idea. Number one would be my number one and biggest probably recommendation is if you've had a CMP exam, a comp and pen, and that examiner gave you an adverse opinion.
Like a non-service connection?
Yeah. So like, you know, you go in and they use like using the back example. Okay. You file your claim for your back. The VA says, oh, look at you complained of back pain when you were in the service. Boom. Step one of the puzzle is complete. Oh, by the way, you're also treating at the VA. So you have a current condition. Step two of the puzzle is complete. Now, the last piece of the puzzle is the opinion. And this is where it gets tricky is, you know, because it's an opinion. You can't say they're wrong. Like,
right.
Can't be right or wrong, right? It's just their opinion. Who's more persuasive is sort of the analysis. But if you've only got one opinion, it's the most persuasive opinion because it's an opinion.
Right.
The only time the opinion can flat out be wrong is if they misstated the evidence, or two, the evidence was not given to them, you know, such that they can't consider the evidence. That's the point when it's wrong. So when there's actually been a comp and pen exam and you're still not happy with the results, that's when I think, you know, getting an attorney involved. And a lot of times at that point, we'll either find the actual mistake with the opinion such that we can tell the VA, hey, this opinion actually is wrong. I can demonstrate that it's wrong because they didn't have this or that or the other thing.
Right. If they have a doctor who renders an opinion that a doctor or the VA combined renders an opinion saying this, you know, we acknowledge you have back pain, but it's not service connected. It is really, really hard at that point to go back to the same VSO and they can file an appeal for you. But it's really, in my experience, from what I've heard working with countless veterans, it's really hard to get them to, like, you need a little bit more firepower to get that reversal.
Yeah.
And same with if they say, yes, it's service connected, but it's not bad enough, 0%, 10%, but you're at like, you know, you're 70, 80, 90%. You need more firepower. You need somebody like Jim and Tabak Law. Like you need it. The VSOs are amazing, but that's not what they're best at, in my opinion. It sounds like that's what you're saying too.
Yeah. Well, and what ends up happening is, and you know, it sucks that it's about money, but to fight these cases costs money sometimes, you know, and American Legion, they don't have a budget to spend on expert opinions, you know.
Right.
There may be studies that they have that are just general blanket studies, but that doesn't count for
an individual
because you need a literal opinion that this person had this experience and his or her current condition is specifically related. You know, it's got to be very specific, and there's language that's required too. So that's when I think that it really is something that an attorney is best equipped to handle, is when you've kind of got all of the evidence that is available to you, given it to them, and they get to the point where it's sufficient, because they're not. So the other thing is the VA is not going to ask for an opinion because they have to pay these people, these doctors.
Right.
And there's been a lot more outsourcing of these opinions. I'm sure, you know, as many of you know, and I don't remember, Adam, if you had gone to an outsourced opinion like through LHI or VES.
I had. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, they pay per opinion. So they're not going to request that opinion unless the first two pieces of the puzzle are apparent, you know. So if they've gotten to the point where they're getting an opinion, they're saying, hey, yeah, you've got a condition, and I see something that's in service that is likely to cause a condition like that. And then, if you get a bad opinion, a lot of times it's very funny because I did workers' comp for the first part of my career too. I didn't have that many veteran clients, so I also did workers' comp. And these opinions are getting more and more like adverse workers' comp opinions, where the insurance company sends you to one of their doctors and they say, oh yeah, I know you slipped and fell while you were working, however you're 48 years old and you've just
sprained your ankle in middle school, so
yeah, or you've got age-related arthritis, and I know it wasn't hurting prior to that fall, but it just happened to be that condition manifested at the exact same time you fell. I don't get it,
right, yeah, just at that one moment.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's very much become that kind of a game, and that's what ends up happening in these opinions is that a lot of times they're relating it to something else, which maybe is partially true, but there's no requirement that your service has to be the 100% cause of your condition. If it
be a contributor.
Yeah, contributor, or or even just accelerated the pre-existing condition to the point where it's come on a little worse and quicker than it would have otherwise. Like
an exacerbator, is that a word?
Yes, yeah.
An exacerbator.
Yeah, I would say it is.
I want to ask you where it's I feel like I could talk to you for hours and just ask questions, and you'd have a captive audience, like our constituents, they want to hear about this. Oh, we have a question from Keith. Sorry, I missed that, my friend. It said, any advice on the VA's new guidance on tinnitus, sleep apnea, and PTSD? And we should do a disclaimer. This is not medical or legal advice here, so he would be speaking in generalities.
So, the VA's new guidance on this hasn't really affected what I've been doing, because we've been doing everything the way, we've been winning these cases that prior to the guidance. And one of them is, the ringing in the ears affecting mental health, and and PTSD being linked with sleep apnea, and quite frankly the other way around too, sleep apnea exacerbating symptoms of PTSD and depression and all that stuff.
And sleep apnea has been connected in a lot of studies to depression, anxiety, ADHD, and the other way around. And I mean, it's like countless connections. And that's another reason why you would go get more firepower for something like this is, finding those correlations. If you do an appeal or an initial claim through a VSO, they're not necessarily going to be able to say, like, look, we have found here sleep apnea connected to depression or ADHD, or depression to tinnitus or PTSD, or any of those things. Somebody who can connect those dots for you. So if what you're asking is, Keith, does the new guidance affect something that Jim does? Maybe not, but would it make it easier potentially for an initial claim to be substantiated accurately? Potentially, but you still may need the firepower.
And to be honest, everything is still going to require those medical opinions. So the biggest piece of the puzzle is when you're going for your medical opinion. So I guess I do have a little advice. You need to really tell how the one condition is related to the other. I mean, if you're claiming that your sleep apnea is related to depression or PTSD, and when you're talking with that examiner, you should try to make sure that condition comes up in the conversation.
And don't try to be a tough guy or gal. But veterans are guilty of that. Like, if you have a comp and pen examination or some sort of examination, be candid. This is your opportunity to talk. Like, don't exaggerate. We're not asking anybody to fabricate anything to get a higher claim, but like, and they'll be able to see right through that most of the time. But like, be candid and talk about like, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how I think this relates to this.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that's kind of interesting, and it's a very sad story, and it really made me think about like my veterans, because so many veterans have the tinnitus and the ringing in the ear. You know, a lot of people,
Rated for tinnitus.
yeah, a lot of people say
Not
so.
hearing loss.
Yeah,
incidentally.
right. No, I know, and
Apparently the tinnitus is service connected, but the hearing loss not so much.
that's a whole nother story. But
yeah,
you can Google this. I don't remember who it was, but there was just a story that came out the other day about the founder of some, I think it was a restaurant, who had long COVID, and as a result of the long COVID had severe debilitating tinnitus.
Whoa.
You know, to the point where he took his own life because he could not live with the ringing in his ears anymore.
Holy cow.
And it made me think of like, you know, it made me sort of think of like our veterans, who many already, because of their service, have struggles with mental health, depression, anxiety, PTSD, what you name it.
Yeah, you add nonstop ringing to that.
You're adding nonstop ringing to the point where, you know, maybe they can't sleep, maybe they can't concentrate. You know, I mean,
wow.
And it's something, and this is one thing that my firm, and I do want to bring this up, that we really focus on is like, you know, a vet comes in and tells us what they want to appeal, right? Like we call them, hey, I got denied my PTSD. I want to appeal it. Okay, we can do that. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to ask you, okay, well, you have PTSD, but what else is going on in your life? What other conditions are you being treated for? You know, are you being treated for anything like diabetes, heart disease, bad knees, bad back? What else had, and on top of that, what else had you applied for in the past that you were denied, and maybe either gave up or, you know, just forgot about? Because, you know, a lot of times we as people get tunnel vision, right? Like this is in front of me. Last week I was denied my PTSD. I want to appeal this. This is bull crap. That's all I'm going to talk about when I call the attorney, my PTSD. But when I get into a file, and my staff, I've trained them, and we're working to think of the veteran, the health, as kind of a more the whole person type of
holistic picture. Yeah.
And here's some of the cases that I've been winning lately, because, you know, you can't always just rate these conditions in a vacuum.
Right.
You know, physical conditions can cause mental health conditions. Mental health conditions can lead to, well, physical and mental health conditions can lead to, you know, not making the best choices, or not being able to, you know, exercise, and, or, you know, sedentary lifestyle, maybe eating habits that aren't perfect. And as you're dealing with these conditions over a long period of time, things happen. You know, you might gain weight. As a result of that, you might get diabetes, or you might get heart disease, or, you know, any number of things. And if you can show a link back to that initial condition, and like I said before, it doesn't have to be the 100% cause of your condition. Like if your service connected condition even contributes to, you know, to the, like I said, the sedentary lifestyle or the weight gain, and you result in these other conditions, by law, that's actually a service related condition, because, you know, had you not had this previous condition, you know, maybe you would have those other conditions. Maybe you wouldn't have them.
Yeah. Maybe could be a domino effect there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe they wouldn't be as bad as they are. So one thing that I would urge veterans to really think about, and the veterans law really is one of the only injury or disability laws where it's actually the standard of proof allows you to make these kind of connections. Think about how your whole life has been affected by whatever's going on. You know, I all the time find when I have veterans with severe physical issues, how is that affecting you mentally? And I don't mean to like insinuate that there's anything wrong there, but I think about myself and like, what do I love to do? I love to do certain things. What if all of a sudden I had this disability and I couldn't do any of that? How would I feel about that? I would not be happy. What if I couldn't work? How would I feel about that? I would, again, it would be rough, to have to deal with that. And, and the other thing to think about too is that the veteran benefits schedule allows for 10, 20, 30% disabilities. So you don't have to be completely disabled, right? Like you don't even have to talk about being completely disabled to be eligible. You could just say, hey, this kind of bothers me. Maybe it affects me in a certain way. Maybe it's only a 10%, or maybe it's higher. It doesn't, that's the other thing I hear all the time. Oh, it's not that bad. Well, the law doesn't require it to be that bad.
Right. Just has to be there.
It has to be there. And guess what? It might get worse. And, and here's the other sad truth is that the longer you wait, the harder it is to prove that it's related. Right.
So when in doubt, I mean, overarchingly, if anybody gets anything from this dialogue, and it's been very informative and very helpful, but file your claim. It doesn't matter who I would suggest you do it through a VSO. Like I personally like the DAV. VFW and American Legion are great as well. I mean, I got my DAV card right here. I'm a card carrying lifetime member. So I'd suggest doing that.
The county guys are really good too.
Yep. Your county, every county has their own veteran services officer. Like get it filed. And if you need help, if you don't like the response, sometimes you bring in more firepower. And Jim and Tabak Law, I mean, like I said, I'm not getting paid to say this. I personally use him and his team. Have been very satisfied so far. Very, very satisfied. So they're good people over there. Jim, we could do this for hours. Maybe we should have a monthly segment or something. I really appreciate your time and everything. Any closing thoughts you want to impart on our listeners or viewers?
I would just say, reiterate, like you said in the beginning, that you bought and paid for these benefits as veterans. This is not a handout. It's not us feeling sorry for anyone. And it's not. It's you paid for an insurance policy by saying, I will give everything up into and including my life for this cause. And as a result of that, you earned and deserve not only all of our respect, but these benefits that you were promised.
Absolutely. You earned it. Earn this. Good stuff. Jim, I'll ask you to hang on the line for just a second. There it is again. Jim bringing the knowledge, bringing that alpha knowledge. Good stuff. And the inside track, the knowledge that you need to know from someone who does it every day and has been doing it for a decade plus. Sometimes you need firepower. Let me bring this across the bottom again. Tabak attorneys, like I said, like Jim said, they don't get paid unless you get what you're owed. There's no fronting anything, so it does not hurt to ask if you feel like the VA has wronged you or not taken care of you in the way to which you deserve. And you've earned that. Don't be bashful. Beat their door down if you have to, and get Jim and his team over there to duke it out for you if you need. Appreciate you guys tuning in. This was a long one, and a lot of you hanging in there. Appreciate you. Make sure to click like, subscribe, follow, share, all that stuff, because it's super important information for everyone in our veteran and military family community. Appreciate you joining us. We're going to see you again, same time, same place next week.